好，同学们，我们是中国现在 which is China Now, with your gang of two, Nan Su, Michael Olson. And we love that you're tuning in as well, because you can join our gang and help us look into the future, by looking into the past today. So recently, I was asked a very interesting question by one of my co-hosts at Santa Cruz Voice, who said he had a question for me. And the question was, has China lost its mandate of heaven? And he went on to explain there's all of these videos about these terrible floods and earthquakes and all of this stuff that's going on in China. It seems like almost supernatural, that somehow China has lost the mandate of heaven. So I thought we'd pick up the subject of why China finds itself in trouble with respect to natural phenomenon, such as fires, floods, earthquakes, and whatnot, the history of those things, and what makes China's landscape so vulnerable to flooding, which was what caused him to ask the question. I see all of these videos out of China where the land is just being flooded. What is going on? So, what's going on is it's raining. So here are a couple pieces about the rain here. First one, for both of these are from Olivia Lee in Epoch Times. This week, a typhoon swept across Hong Kong and southern China on Sunday. That was this past Sunday. Torrential rain and hurricane-force winds toppling trees, tearing down scaffolding and whatnot. And she says that the city raised its highest storm warning, typhoon signal number 10, for nearly 7 hours as Typhoon Wifa's outer bands pounded the territory with wind gusts of 103 miles per hour, and more than 4 inches of rain fell within 3 hours. That's a genuine gusher. And in another article, Olivia made mention of the fact that at least 25 million people in China were affected by natural disasters in the first half of this year, with direct economic losses totaling $7.5 billion. China's Ministry of Emergency Management reported at a press conference. According to the spokesperson, the primary types of natural calamities during this period were earthquakes, flooding, and geological disasters, resulting in 307 deaths or missing persons and the evacuation of 620,000 individuals, the collapse of 29,600 homes, damage to an additional 347,200 homes, and damage to 5.4 million acres of farmland. The agency also reported that various other natural hazards, including hailstorms, droughts, typhoons, unseasonable cold snaps, snowstorms, and forest fires. So all of these things are hitting China. And so the question was, has heaven turned against the CCP, the mandate of heaven? But I thought this would be a great opportunity, Nan Su, to talk about why China has a tough time with its weather and with its rivers overflowing and with the typhoons that spool in from the South China Sea and really plaster China with heavy rains. And it just seems to be in deep trouble. Mandate of heaven. So let's start with the geography and talk about 3 things, I think. 1, the typhoons. 2, the Yangtze River. And 3, the Yellow River. And I'd like to start with the typhoons first, because I've been through one in the South China Sea. And they're ferocious there. and they spool up in the hot water, generate lots of energy, and then slam into the Chinese coast there. As I said, I've been through one when I was in the Navy, and I witnessed a green water going over the flight deck of an aircraft carrier. So the flight deck is 75 feet above the water, and the green water waves were going over the flight deck. That's a big wave. And I was feeling sorry for myself, but I looked out of the hangar bay opening, and I saw one of our escort destroyers go completely out of the water, as if it was a flying fish. I could see the keel out of the water. So just amazing. So these storms slam into the China coast, bringing a lot of water that falls throughout the country, and it does, just where do you put all the water? So you get floods. But traditionally, the Yellow River, as I understand it, is called by the Chinese people the River of Sorrow, because it often floods. Now, I understand during World War II, when the Japanese were chasing the Guomindang, they broke the levees on the Yellow River, and it flooded and lost, I think it was 9.3 million people in that single flood. So the Yellow River gets its start up near Mongolia in the Los Plateau, and that Los is just fine yellow sand. And when it rains up there, that yellow sand goes into the river, which is how it got its name, the Yellow River, and it floats down with the water, and then falls out of the water and raises the riverbed. And so the people who live along the Yellow River have had to keep building dikes up through the years. And now in many places, the Yellow River is elevated above the farmland in the surrounding areas, because they've had to keep building dikes up. As the Yellow River keeps depositing sand on the bottom, it just keeps growing up. So this is a tremendous liability for China, because when those dikes break, it floods. And that's how the Yellow River got its name, the River of Great Sorrow. And then the Yangtze is in the south, and it flows through mountains. And those mountains are taking a lot of rainfall, and the water builds up. And the same thing is, though it's not a loose sand in the bottom of the river, there's a lot of sediment, and it's building up. And in places where China has all of its dams. Now, since the revolution was won in 1949, the CCP has been building a lot of dams. And those dams have been giving China a lot of electricity, the most notable of which, of course, is the Three Gorges Dam. So you have a country that's always seems to be in trouble with floods, earthquakes, and whatnot. And throughout Chinese history, the Chinese people have always looked at how the weather was going as a indication of heaven's pleasure or displeasure with whoever is running the country at the time. And throughout history, the ruling party, whoever takes over and takes over the new dynasty, claims that they have a mandate of heaven to run the country. And the emperor is the son of heaven. And so then when things go wrong, as they seem to be going wrong right now, where you have a lot of trouble with natural phenomenon as well as political phenomenon and economic phenomenon, the people say, well, they're losing their mandate of heaven. So, Nan Su, how can the CCP possibly claim to have the mandate of heaven when they're atheists?
No. They are using the traditional way of language. It's just like it's all cheating. Basically, they don't believe anything. They don't believe any heaven. So, but heaven as a Taoist way of represent tradition. People get used to all this language. They don't
think about what it really means then.
Yeah, they don't really think about what it means. That's the way it is. It's just it's people used to express themselves that there's a tremendous terminology here in Chinese language because of the Taoist tradition, talking about heaven. They're just naturally something they always refer to, but it has nothing to do with the Chinese Communist Party. But they are very good. The CCP are very, very good at using this language to mislead people.
In what respect?
In every aspect.
Okay, so
they what they truly believe is the Marxism and Leninism, all this communism, the atheism. But however, when they try to convince people for something, so the people will believe their lies, they will use all different languages. People get used to listen. Those proverb, whatever, to make people follow their logic. They don't believe heaven. Okay, Xi Jinping is the God.
yeah.
Until he dies, somebody.
He's the son of heaven. He is the son of heaven, even though they don't
he's
believe
not
in
even
heaven.
the son of heaven. No, this is the big difference. This is the big difference. The Communist Party, it's a God. I have somebody. There was a very famous Chinese Catholic. He came to the United States. He stayed in 7 years because he truly practiced Catholicism in China. He didn't go. He didn't just make a compromise and go to those state operating those Catholic church in China operating by the CCP. He truly tried to practice his faith of Catholicism. He ended up staying in jail for 7 years. He later got out of China. He came to the United States. He wrote a book. The color of God is red.
The color of God is red.
It's red. So this is the big difference. Okay. The traditional Chinese, see, that's why I saw all this media, say Xi Jinping it's an emperor. No, Xi Jinping it's not an emperor. See, in the ancient times, emperors, you still have some sort of judgment about emperors' behavior because people's faith. The Taoist philosophy that believe there is a creator, although they don't know the name of the creator, but they still believe a creator. So there's someone above the emperor. But if you look at the CCP, there is nobody above a CCP. All right? Here in the United States, that's why we need to get out of our mentality to think, to try to understand China in the way that we understand ourselves. That's the biggest problem. That's the mentality problem. And we always say America is one nation under God.
God.
You go to China, it's
One
totally
nation under
different.
the CCP.
Your God is under CCP. Your God, if your God is not under CCP, either you're going to be wiped out or your God is going to be wiped out. So I mean the church, right? Not your God, but that's what happened in China. So that's the difference between the communist leader and the ancient emperor of China.
So for Mao and his followers through the years to conquer the Chinese people, they somehow had to eradicate Taoism and Buddhism and Christianity.
No. They do it in the very they are very smart. And all these communist party people, they are bad. They're evil. They're pure evil. But but never underestimate. Estimate them because they're super smart. They don't just go wipe it out, take it from you, unless it's necessary. Usually they will, like a Catholic Church, right in China. Uh, that they are allowed to they are allowed in operation ever since the Communist Party took over control in China in 1949. But however, Chinese communist leader, they will assign all the priests like a bishop
Right.
or cardinals. They nominate them.
So instead
And
of a
they
picture of Jesus on the wall, there's a picture of Xi Jinping on the wall.
Well, it's Chairman Mao, right?
Chairman Mao,
In
yeah.
the Forbidden City, right? Those, it's so basically, and then the Taoist philosophy, Confucius philosophy, they talk about it all the time, and then they will have their own scholars, because they will have basically it's all about the publicity. The publicity is cheap once the government support those people. So they will have all these people go all around, on the TV, on the radio, on the newspaper, covering their events. Oh, this guy is great, and he is he basically it take no time to have them to promote a prominent figure in in any philosophy, regardless it's a Buddhist philosophy, Taoist philosophy, Confucius philosophy. So these people will have you know biggest name in the field. And but then when everybody listen to this guy or this lady, and when they talk about to explain the philosophy, well, they will explain the philosophy in the ways the CCP want them to explain. And it's not about Bible. It's all about how you interpret the Bible, right?
And who you listen to. Um, what happened? What happened then uh, to the CCP's control of faiths, traditions, when people started doing Falun Gong or Falun Dafa? It
Well,
seemed like
see, yeah. See, they try the way that I talk about is they how to deal with the traditional, the religions has been there for thousands of years. So they kind of like they know it's very hard to get rid of them right away. But Falun Gong, it rooted in the traditional Chinese culture, but it belongs, those things, the secret cultivation way, one generation you only have one disciple, so that kind of a system. And until 1992, Mr. Li Hongzhi, actually introduced them to the public, It's just like 2,500 years ago, Lao Tzu wrote the very first book about the Taoist philosophy. But however, the Taoist philosophy have been embedded in the traditional Chinese culture for, as long as the Chinese people exist, right? 5 or 7,000 years.
Sure.
Now, but in 2,500 years ago, Lao Tzu wrote the first book, Tao Te Ching, to introduce the Taoist philosophy to the public. Therefore comes, the Taoist philosophy. So now, so in 1992, Falun Gong was introduced to the public, and then because of the tremendous health benefit, in very short 7 years, there are close to 100 million people practicing Falun Gong in China. Yeah, it held 3 principles of truthfulness, compassion, tolerance. Pretty much, you see all the Orthodox religion.
Same thing, yeah.
It's a universe,
Sure.
universal value, right? It's a universal value. So, but however, because of a tremendous, health benefit that it grows to, in short 7 years, it grows to, the total practitioner numbers grew to close to 100 million people in China, and based on the government statistic. So because it's pretty new, so that the government basically label it's a very bad words, cow or sack or whatever, they try to label them, and they manufacture a bunch of lies, and they start a persecution against it, and then it became and because of the persecution. Of course, we're not talking about the how bad it is. Just think about how China had an explosive growth, super fast speed to have a fully developed organ transplant industry in China. It's
They had a lot of volunteers to turn over their organs, didn't they?
That's right. Now China is the second largest organ transplant nation in the world. It took U.S. like 50, 60 years to build. It only takes China 6-7 years. Why? Because they have unlimited amount of organ donors. It's a bank. They kill people based on the need. They can do that. They don't have no organ donation network. They ship the real person to the operating room, and while the patient is waiting to the organ receiver it's waiting. So that's why in very short amount of time they are able to build a big, the second largest organ transplant network in China, and they got enough money because number one, you need a donor, right? Number two, you need the money, the investment. How do they get the money? They sell the organs to the foreigners, and all the foreigners going to China, 2 weeks they will receive their donors, and then they also in this process accumulate experience. That's all 3 things they need. They have donors, they have money, and now they have experience. So that's how they have how China grew and become the second largest organ transplant industry in the world, and within just like 5-6 years.
We're going to be right back after this brief message, but when we come back, I'd like to address the issue of morality or the lack of morality.
Well, we haven't talked about this, how this flood is. Let's finish the flood first.
Okay.
We have a lot to
cover. The mandate of heaven. I'm fascinated with where we're going here, but we will be right back, ladies and gentlemen, so please do stay tuned.
Attention content producers. You can have access to a complete digital media production facility at Satellite Co-working and Digital Media Studio on SoCal Avenue. Easily rent video and audio equipment, a studio with green screen, editing suite, and audio booth, all at can't say no rates. Schedule a tour to see for yourself at satellitecoworking.com. Mention Santa Cruz Voice for 20% off your first reservation.
It's time to eat healthy and happy. Hello, I'm Carolyn at Charlie Hong Kong. One ingredient that makes Charlie Hong Kong noodle and rice bowls so healthy and happy is the fresh organic greens we source every day from the farmers who grow them in the sacred soil of the Pajaro Valley. They are fresh and delicious. When your body cries out for real food, stop by Charlie Hong Kong, Santa Cruz.
Treehouse dispenses not only the finest cannabis products, but information to those who want to know how to use cannabis for maximum benefit. Hello, I'm Jenna. If you would like to know how best to use cannabis, ask your friends and neighbors at Treehouse Dispensary, 3651 Soquel Drive. If you're 21 plus with a valid ID, no appointment is necessary and the information is free. Order online at ourtreehouse.io and pick up at our drive-thru. See you soon.
About that first impression. Hi, this is Bettina McBee from Bettina's Buzz on SantaCruzVoice.com. And that first impression is my business card created by Dynamic Press. It is my favorite business card. It gets everybody's attention right away. If you want to make a good first impression, get your business cards and any printed media at Dynamic Press. And tell Angelo Bettina sent you.
Welcome back. 这是中国现在 with Nan Su and Michael Olson. And before we run off to the floods, which is supposed to be the topic of this hour, I got terribly fascinated with our discussion of the Chinese move away from a moralistic society to an amoralistic society of the Chinese Communist Party. There is no God for the Chinese Communist Party. Is there any kind of morality for the Chinese people if there is no God? Is it a...
if there's no God, and then they don't respect the universal values of truth, compassion, tolerance, this is how the Chinese community end up with what it looks like today, right? You can see what happened. You have all these poison food, poison toy, you name it. I don't want to go.
Fair enough.
Go to cover every aspect. Let's talk about the flood.
Let's talk about the flood.
Yeah, let's talk about the flood. We already know. The Chinese. How the Chinese and all the Chinese poor quality products, from China. I don't think I need to talk more about that. Americans all know that in the past more than 2 decades of time, China is famous for that. Now, flood. The few things about the flood. Why there's so much disasters. Those disasters are not it's not the natural disasters. Those are the man-made disasters. In the cities, when the big storms coming, very often the city, the people, the residents living in the city, that's the time they find out. The city never really have a complete sewer system.
So what you're saying is that the city people find out there's a flood coming because the flood came, and it's you're already drowning in the water.
Right.
So now you learn about the flood,
sewer
right?
system. It's a joke, basically, right? Now, along the rivers. Here is what happened. China built more dams by levees than any other country in the world. So what happens, because the dams are so overbuilt, number one thing, it actually caused a lot of dries. Now you think you build dam, but it's because you want to use the water. It's not true. There was scientists that had a calculation. When you overbuild a dam, then when you build a dam, but the overall water surface got increased. So you increase the evaporation of amount. So you lost when you overbuild dams, then you start losing water.
Because the water is sitting right there.
Yeah,
and
the
it
water
evaporates.
sitting right there, and the total surface increased tremendously, right? If there is no Hoover Dam, then the total water surface is just the river surface.
Right.
But because you build a Hoover Dam, now you have a tremendous amount of surface, a lot bigger than the surface of the river. So now, while we did America here, we have a few big dams. It's not big deal because as long as we are not overbuilt, we're not really we can still use the water from the dam effectively.
So,
But in
Nancy,
China,
when
there's
you
so
say-
much overbuilt.
Yeah. To what extent is it overbuilt? And give us an idea of how many dams China has built.
I don't have the number right off the hand, but it's just so overbuilt. Now let's talk about it's there was a lot of scientific report about they're so overbuilt. I don't have the number off the hand. I can give you later, but they're just totally overbuilt. Now,
here,
it's like
I
a
know
big.
what we'll do. We'll ask Chat GPT.
Okay.
How
okay.
many dams has the Chinese Communist Party built since 1949?
See if it's able to answer that question for you.
We'll see.
Okay. Now let's continue. Now here is the issue. Now it really becomes a management issue later, because they build this dam because they want they build this dam for profit, right? Because now, which is connected to your last subject, how morally corrupted
Yes.
of the country. So everyone want to maximize their profit. So now, and whether it's something, they're not listen to a human being. So before when they have the all this weather forecasts, they are like 50% possibility right or 50% not right? Now, when it comes to the storm, before the storm, you're supposed to first let the water out. So have the reservoir half empty or 1/3 empty, prepare for the storm coming, right? But because the weather forecast cannot be all the time right. If the storm doesn't come, then you lose all the water, which is money.
It's like a gamble, right?
Yeah, it's a gamble. So now, then there's a lot of times. Then, for example, Three Gorges Dam. They do it. Pretty much every year when because on the upstream, there's a lot of different branches that comes to the Yangtze River, and they gather together and going down through the Three Gorges Dam. It's very hard to predict because the weather can go different times. Like one major branch of Yangtze River, they may have that storm, and then another storm come to another different river branch will be like a few days later. So by the time the first storm went through, the second storm still not coming yet. So it's very hard to calculate all this, how all this water coming together, what's the peak time. So a lot of times for their profit purpose, they don't, empty or lower the water level in the reservoir before the storm comes. So by the time, they realize, oh, it's going to happen, then they start, let the water out. They just, they don't, say once you pull, you let the water out in the big time, so it's a big flood on downstream, right?
And when you have one dam after the other all the way down the stream, and everybody's doing the same thing,
Yeah.
and so what you end up with is these spectacular floods.
Disaster. There's a lot of a disaster happen, and then it happen year after year after year in China, and then and then it becomes a huge propaganda engine for the communist regime, because they controls the media. So they don't let the public know how this decision is made, the process of the decision making. They don't let people know. So people do not, not aware of, what's behind all these big flood coming. And so now when the bigger flood does happen, they will send the military, and they will send the military go there to help people, move away. And then they will have one hero after another hero, the police hero, the military soldier hero. It's a man-made disaster. And then they create all these heroes, and then to increase the attachment of the society to the communist regime, because they are the ones saving them.
So really, with respect to the whole concept of the mandate of heaven, do the Chinese people buy into the mandate of heaven? So the disaster is a man-made disaster, but it's still...
there's not a lot of people talking about the man-made disasters. Only the political dissident talking about these man-made disasters. Nowadays there are more and more people, because there's a YouTube, there's there you have YouTubers. Of course, you have to do it outside of China, and you can't go, can't talk about the inside of China. You talk about the inside of China, you know where you're going to end up with. You're going to be behind the bars, basically.
Organ donor.
Yeah, you become organ donors, possibly.
So I did a quick search for the mandate of heaven. All through my studies of China and Chinese language and culture and art and everything, I often ran into the concept of the mandate of heaven as being a sign from the heaven that the heaven approves or disapproves of the activities of the emperor. So if all hell's breaking loose and the dams are breaking and things are falling apart, that's a sign of disfavor. Natural disasters, famines, social unrest, all of those are signs that the ruler has lost the mandate. Such events often lead to revolts and the rise of new leaders who claim to have gained the mandate. So it's like a magic baton, this mandate of heaven, that can be in great contention by the different factions of the government. The dynastic cycle, the mandate of heaven, explains the rise and fall of dynasties throughout Chinese history. A new dynasty claims the mandate upon its establishment, while a declining dynasty is seen as having lost it. So, do you think, Nan Su, that the CCP has lost its mandate of heaven?
Oh, I believe that a long time ago. This is the secret. Once I start practicing Falun Gong, I believe CCP already lost the mandate of heaven. This is how powerful of if once you start believing there is a creator, then you believe the communist regime, they will collapse. It's just that, sooner or later, that's what it is. So, if you believe God, you're a Christian or you're a Catholic or you're whatever the
A
religion you
Taoist or whatever, right?
believe, like the true believer of, you look at the true believer of the Tibetan Buddhism, those families, in order for their children truly receive, to be educated in their own culture, they send them to uh, Dharansara, Dharansara, that's in India, right? That's where the Dharansara, that's in India. That's where the Dalai Lama lives, right?
Right. So,
Hello,
yes, you there?
you follow me?
Yes,
I'm not
I
sure if
got
I
you.
got that. Huh?
I got you.
Yeah. So same thing. That's why you Uyghurs are persecuted in China. That's why all these people, underground church of Christian people, they were persecuted. Um, that's how also all the traditional church, not temples of a Buddhist temple, Taoist temple, being corrupted by the communist regime. Um,
It's
so
interesting.
it
They've taken over the church in the same way they've captured the elite in our country, in
it's
the
true.
in the
It's
United
true.
States. Yeah. So, wow, the mandate of heaven. What happens then when people believe in God? They can't possibly believe that the CCP has the mandate of heaven.
Well, because CCP does not belong to because CCP does
Does
not
not
believe
belong to heaven.
anything above. They don't believe the creation, right? So if they do not believe the creation, then they're just using this world, because people get used to use this world.
So when the CCP saw the extent of the growth of Falun Gong, where essentially it went from one person to 100 million people in a very quick period of time, it must have frightened them. When did the
Well,
when,
the key here is the Falun Gong. Uh, they talk about, they believe life after death. It's a
right.
Buddhist discipline, practice. The problem is the population. When you have so many people believe life after death, uh, you know, then they believe, and then people will, in the reasoning process, if there is a life after death, who arranged that, right? So you naturally go, when you go deeper, that's the creation, and which is totally go against
The
the
CCP.
evolution theory, right? So,
Right.
and my one of the founding stones for atheism, it's to continue to have believers. That's the evolution.
Where will this antipathy toward people of faith take the CCP? I mean, I think of the degeneration of morality and the consequence of that degeneration of morality into even just the infrastructure of society. And I'm thinking of the tofu dreg projects. Um,
Yeah,
and
that's just one of the, right,
that's
one
a
of the.
perfect example of what happens when we lose morality. We start
Yeah.
building skyscrapers out of tofu drag that we know they're going to fall apart, uh, but it doesn't matter because you're making the money up front, and the heck with whoever gets stuck in the 43rd story of that tofu drag skyscraper. It doesn't matter. So, can I don't see how you can build a world without that morality. And so I can't see how this CCP can survive, I guess, without the mandate of heaven. They think they can, but I don't think so.
Well, eventually, you look at all the empires that's in the Chinese history. They all started from a mandate of heaven, but eventually they will go collapse.
And they collapse because they become corrupt,
people,
right? They collapse because they become corrupt, or because nature catches up with them of some kind.
For me, I truly believe the mandate of heaven for Chinese people is to bury the communist movement in this human world, because we are assigned by the mandate of heaven. This is our responsibility. That's what I truly believe.
And that's why we're afraid of Donald Trump going to Beijing.
Well, I hope he's not going, but even he's going, to bury the last stronghold of communist regime. I think it's still the responsibility of Chinese people.
It is the Chinese people.
And also, the people all around the world, if you don't want to see your children and grandchildren become the slave of CCP.
We've been talking about how China is really not a great country. It is a maximum security prison. And if we don't want our children to grow up in a maximum security prison, then we must do everything we can to stand up to the Chinese Communist Party. Because the Chinese Communist Party is doing everything it can to stand up to us. It is war.
It is a war. Americans, please, if you are listening to this program, think about this. You can't win. You are never going to be able to win a war if you go to a war with the mentality of a competition. You're just not going to win the war. So that's why, it's very important for us to change the mentality, to defend the peace. Our purpose is to defend the peace. But if you don't realize this is a war, you're not going to be able to defend the peace.
And there you go. Well, Nan Su, that's been a very interesting conversation, because to me, I simply can't understand how you can build a world on tofu drag. And that seems to be...
they may not be able to build this war on tofu drag, but they are able to threaten everybody. I mean, you're going to you see all the atrocities happen, in China after communist regime took over control of China. Now, you don't want, eventually, I think that there will be a day that the Chinese people will rise up and throw the regime away. But think about how many atrocities they have to go through to get to that point. And then you certainly don't want the whole world to get through that whole process. Think about if there is a war that takes place tomorrow in the Western Pacific region, how many American soldiers, men and women in service, are going to lose their lives? How much
the
blood
American
we need to
military
pay.
estimates it's going to be somewhere between 40 and 50,000 people to start.
To start with, right?
Yeah.
That's just to start with. Yeah. I think that we need to realize the gravity of the situation facing us today. And then, the first thing we need to do is to change our mentality. We don't want a war, but in order to defend the peace, that we need to realize that we are actually in war.
Yeah. Well, who does the bully kick sand in the face of? Is it the strong guy or the weak guy? Bullies always pick on the weak. And if we don't want to succumb to this Chinese Communist Party, I think we're the last stand. Can you think of any other nation capable?
Yeah, if we are weak, if the United States is weak, there's no other place we can turn to.
Yeah. Do you think China was counting on that when they purchased our elite, when they captured our elite?
Well, that's what they have done. That's how they won the civil war and kicked the Kuomintang government to Taiwan. They done it many times. That's how they successfully took over control of China between 1945, the end of World War, the surrender of Japanese Royal Military, and 1949. Only 4 years, they took over control of China.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, that's been a very interesting hour. Hope you enjoyed it. I certainly did. Nan Su, we're looking into the dog days of summer, but there's a lot of things that potential for excitement on the horizon here. One of them, of course, is September 3, when the CCP puts on its massive military parade. Some things to watch there. Who is standing on the podium? Will it be Xi Jinping, Vladimir Putin, and Donald Trump? That's something to watch, because if that's the case, it's going to make a huge, huge impact, I think, on how the world sees the legitimacy of the CCP. And I hate to see Donald Trump giving them that. But there is a temptation for Donald Trump to go there for the exposure that he will get. And we all know how Donald Trump loves being in front of the camera. Bad sign in my estimation. Then there's the fourth plenum coming. And the fourth plenum, Nan Su, that's what?
We don't know. There are rumors saying that's probably going to be in August, before the
really? Before the
military marching.
Well, that would make sense.
Maybe.
That would make sense.
Well, that may be,
Go ahead.
Yeah, if that's the case, then they're going to using that military parade to enforce wherever the agenda passed by the fourth plenary meeting.
There it
or
is.
If not, then maybe in October or in November.
So,
but
two big things
so
to
far,
watch for.
there's a lot of rumors about the August meeting.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, that's been China Now. 谢谢你, and thank you, Nan Su. Always enjoy talking it down with you, and I especially like talking about character. And that's what we really came to grips with today under the guise of Mandate of Heaven. Thank you all for tuning in. Stay tuned next week for more China Now, and it's always going to be interesting. You can count on that. Thank you.